All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome. We've still got a lot of folks coming in, so I'm going to hold on before we get started. All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the What's Up with E-bikes and E-scooters panel discussion. My name's David Salmon. I'm one of our three moderators. I know we still have some folks filtering in, but in the interest of time, we are going to get started. So I'm going to go through a little introduction here. Did want to mention the two agencies or two professional associations that are kind of co-sponsoring this: American Planning Association Wisconsin chapter and the Transportation Planning Division, as well as the Association of Pedestrian Bicycle Professionals Wisconsin chapter. We are so excited for you all to be here. So a little bit about what we're doing here. So the big purpose here is to elevate the conversation around e-bikes, e-scooters, and e-motos. I'm sure, given how many of you are here, that this is a very salient topic for you. I know where I work, this is a topic that comes up pretty regularly. And so we want to make sure that this conversation is had, that we're trying to get on the front end of this, given that there has so much that has changed in this industry in the last couple of years, and it continues to evolve. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be setting the scene of what's up with the industry. Where are e-bikes going? How many folks are using them? Just getting a little bit of a breakdown on that. We're going to start talking about some of the issues that people are experiencing, local communities are struggling with, and then looking at solutions and really trying to talk through what are some of the different things that might be able to be implemented at different scales of government. For attendees, there questions or comments that you have and you want the panel to discuss can go into the Q&A feature. We will be keeping track of that throughout the conversation, and there will be a section at the end to answer your questions. And then there is CM credits available for APA members, and we will share that link with you in a follow-up email. So the quick agenda, we're going to talk a little bit about e-bikes, e-scooters, and e-motos in state law. We're going to introduce everyone that you're going to be seeing, our moderators and our panelists. We're going to get into the discussion, and we've broken it into three parts. And then we're going to have Q&A and then a little bit of a wrap up. So we're expecting this is going to take the full hour plus some change. This is also being recorded, so you will get an automatic email with a link to the recording, and then we are looking at a more permanent location, perhaps a YouTube channel, and we'll share that with the attendees via email. We've still got some folks filtering in. We're very excited about that. So I wanted to start out with just a quick intro of where is Wisconsin e-bike law in the state of Wisconsin. And in Wisconsin, there is the three-tiered class. So class one is a pedal assist bicycle that can assist the bicyclist up to 20 miles per hour. There is no throttle on this. Class 2 is throttle capable, meaning that you can use the throttle and you don't have to pedal. That is up to 20 miles per hour max. And then there is the third class, which is a pedal assist up to 28 miles per hour. These all have to have 700 motors that are 750 watts or less. And those class 3 bikes are only allowed for people who are 16 and up. There is requirements in state law that all three of these vehicles are have permanent class labels so that we can see what they are. And then a speedometer is required for class 3. They are allowed on shared use paths in state law. However, class 1 and 3 do have a speed limit on state trails, while class 2 is not allowed on state trails. And then local rules apply for use on sidewalks. So another e-mobility device is e-scooters. They have handlebars. They're powered solely by electric motor and human power. They have a maximum speed of 20 miles per hour. And again, that is defined in state law. But ultimately, a lot of the issues that we're starting to see relate to e-motos. These are out-of-class electric mobility devices. These devices may have motors that exceed 750 watts. They might have a throttle, and they probably don't have operable pedals. So in Wisconsin state law, this really kind of fits somewhere in the classification of a motorcycle, a moped, or a motor bicycle, and it kind of is going to depend on what it is, based on what laws it's going to have to apply to. But for both motorcycles, mopeds, and motorbikes, it requires insurance and licensing in order to operate those, although no insurance is needed for limited use off-highway motorcycles. So this is kind of a big gray area. A lot of vehicles are being sold as e-bikes, but they're not. They are e-motos, and these are not allowed on bikeways per state law. So that's shared use paths as well as bike lanes. So quick intro to our moderators. Myself, David Salmon, I am the transportation coordinator with the city of Sun Prairie. I work as our lead Vision Zero active transportation and public transit staffer. And really, I'm passionate about transportation discourse, and I serve on the chair as the chair, co-chair for APBP Wisconsin, APA Wisconsin, TPD, and a couple of other boards. Kim Biedermann serves as the principal planner and regional bike and pedestrian coordinator at the East Central Wisconsin Regional Planning Commission. She is passionate about regional active transportation planning, helping communities explore safe and connected multimodal networks across the 7-county member region. She is also my co-chair for APBP Wisconsin. Alexander Brown serves as Planner 3, Funding and Grants with SRF. Consulting, apologize that mistake. He is committed to delivering high-quality multimodal projects to communities around the Midwest. Previously, Alexander served as transportation coordinator for City of Sun Prairie, MPO coordinator for the Janesville area MPO, so has local government experience with transportation, is also the co-leader of the Wisconsin chapter of the APA Transportation Planning Division. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Kim to introduce our panelists.
Yes, good afternoon, everybody. We have a really exciting set of panelists. First is Andy Bill. Andy is the director of the Wisconsin Local Technical Assistance Program and associate director of the Traffic Operations and Safety Laboratory and Eastern Tribal Technical Assistance Program at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. With these roles, she has been bringing her research to technology transfer through in-person and virtual webinars throughout Wisconsin and the U.S. She focuses on safe system, human factors, traffic operations, work zone design, incident management, roadway lighting, engineering ethics, connected and automated vehicles, and traffic safety. She is a passionate advocate for making research tangible to practitioners and to foster implementation and widespread adoption. She is actively involved in the Transportation Research Board, Institute of Transportation Engineers, Association of Safety Information Professionals, and American Society of Engineering Education. And next we have Joel Gregozeski. Joel brings more than 25 years of professional experience in public service and local government. Since 2020, he has served as village manager for the village of Ashwaubenon, overseeing daily operations, managing an annual budget of more than $42 million, and leading a team of over 120 full-time employees. In this role, he is responsible for implementing policy set by the village board, ensuring efficient service delivery, and supporting the community's continued growth. During his tenure, Joel has led several key initiatives, including strategic planning, policy and code updates, and capital improvement projects that enhance pedestrian, bicycle, and multimodal transportation systems. He also played a central role in planning and executing the 2025 NFL Draft. And next we have Jake Newborn. Jake is the Assistant Director of the Wisconsin Bike Fed. Jake is proud to have worked for the organization for 18 years and served in nearly every capacity of the organization in his many roles over the years. He enjoys meeting riders of all types, from the back alleys to the boardrooms. He recently completed his League of American Bicyclists Certified Instructor Coach certification to expand the network of LCIs in Wisconsin. He owns an e-cargo bike that he uses to reduce car trips and carry everything from groceries to golf clubs by bike. And next we have Rebecca Rabitin. She is the Community Access and Legislative Policy Analyst with Independent First, a center of independent living service serving Milwaukee, Ozaukee, Washington, and Waukesha counties. She works with various public entities within the 4 counties and WSDOT to ensure persons with disabilities' voices are heard on policy, procedures, and design. Prior to her role at Independent First, Rebecca worked as the ADA coordinator with the City of Milwaukee for 7 years. And last but certainly not least is Jason Schultz. Jason is the buyer and assistant manager at Coontail, an outdoor retailer located in Arborvitae and Boulder Junction, Wisconsin. His background is specialty outdoor retail. Since 2001, he has worked in the outdoor, bike, and paddle retail landscape, working for several small shops in the Green Bay, Fox Valley area. And now for the past 8 years, he's in Wisconsin's North Woods. On the cycling end of things, Coontail is a bike shop that carries traditional pedal-powered bikes, but is also heavily stocked with e-bikes. Being located at the heart of one of Wisconsin's largest tourist hubs and combined with a large, ever-growing network of bike paths and trails, the cycling presence in Coontail service area is rapidly growing.
All right. Well, thank you, Kim, for that. And yeah, we're going to hand it over to Alexander to help get us started in the panel discussion.
Thank you, Kim and David. Without further ado, we'll get started with our panel discussion. As questions come up, please take advantage of the Q&A function, which is the icon in between the chat function and the people function on the top ribbon of Teams, and we will take those in the order those are received at the end of the panel during the Q&A. We will kick off our panel discussion with 60 seconds from each panelist with a broad question. From your perspective, what is the role of e-bikes in our transportation system? We'll start with Andy.
Thank you. The pressure of going first. First of all, thank you guys for taking time out of your busy day to be with us to talk about e-bikes and e-scooters. As we think about the role in our transportation systems, we are seeing a growth in it. I think all of the panelists will talk about how many more e-bikes are out there and are looking at the ability to have more mobility out there and how we're using them. I think one thing from my side that we're going to continue to see is our modes of transportation are going to change. We're going to have more wide varieties of different types of e-bikes, e-scooters, whatever we want to talk about as we move forward. And so having discussions like this to determine where does it move operationally and safely in our system are things that we need to continue to have. So thinking about it from an e-bike perspective today, but then what's going to be tomorrow or the next day after that. So being able to be a part of these conversations and building that community is really important for us. Thank you, Alex.
Thank you, Andy. We'll pass the same question over to Joel. From your perspective, what is the role of e-bikes in our transportation system?
Sure. Well, thank you again. Thanks for the opportunity to present and be a panelist. For us locally, I think what we're seeing is obviously micromobility. The proliferation of these devices is really enhancing mobility, especially for our youngest, most inexperienced users. At least that's what we're seeing in our community. I think back to when I was a kid growing up, we rode our bikes everywhere. And then there was a period of time where kids kind of stuck inside and played video games and did whatever, and they weren't as active. But now with the proliferation of these e-bikes and these micro-mobility devices, we're seeing kids coming and going and being outside and engaging socially. So I think it plays a really important role because it adds that degree of efficiency at a very efficient level.
Thank you, Joel. Same question to you, Jake.
Yeah, hey. So I think that definitely what we're seeing is it's a huge uptick for sure. And it's not just, older people or people with a disability or something. It's really becoming across all spectrum of types of users. And with the addition of kind of the cargo bike capacity, we're not seeing them just as, grocery getters either. It's replacing trips. People are putting their kids in there. They're going camping. Like I said, I take my golf clubs there. And we're definitely seeing that, it's people who are maybe looking for alternatives to cuts in bus services affecting people. So maybe they're looking for a way to kind of get around. And I just want to also highlight that it's still an active workout aspect. People kind of think it's, oh, it's cheating or you don't have to do any work. I will tell you, like I said, I have the e-cargo bike. It's still with the pedal assist. I'm still, working up a sweat and getting that, the body moving. So just here to help offer some of our, education and outreach opportunities as well. So thank you.
No, absolutely. Thanks for that perspective, Jake. I'll put the same question to you, Rebecca.
Well, Jake already mentioned about the aging population and the disabled population. Us boomers, I am a boomer, we still want to get out there and do things. Maybe I don't use it as a means of transportation, but definitely when I go on vacation, I like to bike. And I maybe don't have the stamina like I used to. And I think that's what's happening with a lot of other boomers, or, all those individuals don't have disabilities. So it's nice having these other options to be able to still participate and get out there and enjoy yourself.
And last but not least, Jason.
Perfect. I get to go last and everyone has used my talking points. So coattailing with what Rebecca said, up here, Vilas County it was years ago, I don't know if it still is the oldest demographic, the oldest county in the state. So we have a lot of retirees up here. So we see a lot of that, a lot of people who haven't biked in sometimes decades that are coming in. As mentioned before, a lot of times it's, hip replacements and knee replacements. That's real popular. And people that like they're starting out brand new to the biking thing. I would also say she had mentioned the vacation, people coming up here. I hear so often people going on certain trips and, river trips in Europe, and they have e-bikes that allow you to go and see these cities very efficiently and park way more efficiently. And so it's a broad scope of what you're able to do with these. I think we're just starting to see the beginning of it.
Oh, thank you, Jason. Thank you, everyone, for your introductory answers there. We'll dive deeper into the next layer here. What growth and changes are occurring with respects to e-bikes and e-scooters? Jason, since we made you go last, we'll make you go first on this one and talk about some big picture trends.
Yeah, so I mean, in the last, say, 8-9 years in the industry, I was one of those people, 8-9 years ago who was, oh yeah, this is cheating. I was a purist cyclist. And then as I started talking with people and realizing, oh, like these are genuinely helping people out, for sure it was starting out with retirees and things of that nature. But I really changed my tune quick and realized that it's not just a matter of people who just needed them, but all of a sudden I'm seeing the ages and stuff drop down and people are using them. Obviously, mountain biking has really taken off, and fathers that are now able to keep, fathers who might be 60 years old are able to keep up with their, 30-year-old son of that nature. So it's been really cool to see the expansion from companies and of their offerings and see all the different ways that people are using these bikes.
Absolutely. Same question to you, Jake.
Yeah, thanks. I think, to go off Jason for sure. I mean, lots of increased usage that's why we're here today to be talking about this. I'd say that the number one thing I've noticed is the increase in complaints that are coming into the bike fed, generally around trail usage. Obviously with kind of increased speeds and more users, you're just going to see the more chances for kind of things to happen than in the past. But I do think that there's a tendency to, there's a little bit of a misconception. I think that the speed perception can be something we can talk about more. Someone passes you going 15 miles an hour, compared to maybe 10 when they weren't on an e-bike. Is that really a big difference? Maybe to a pedestrian, specifically, that might feel differently. But it maybe, is it really an unsafe speed for the usage? And I think one thing we're also, I'm talking with a lot of kind of transportation planners and looking at with the city and county parks in Milwaukee, it's about widening paths. I think that especially when we increase usage and we have higher speeds, we need to start looking at, making 8-foot paths, 12-foot paths, and so on. The other picture I'm starting to see is with the higher price tag on these, cargo, even just a regular e-bike, a class 1, can reach $2,000, $3,000. And that makes it a felony theft when stolen. So we've actually recently, last summer, there was a little bit of a ring kind of happening in Milwaukee area. We worked with the MPD to express our concerns, to help crack down on that. We're some kind of local citizens to provide feedback. But that's another thing that we're going to start to see if if you haven't yet, you're going to have more expensive bikes out there being potentially, stolen, just as we have with, regular acoustic bikes in certain areas and at certain times, maybe of the year. But I think that overall, it's just, again, we're seeing growth and there's a lot of excitement around it. And I want to work to find solutions that kind of make it safe, continue that trend of people using them, getting them out of their cars, giving them that independence to get around. And so, we're here to get ahead of this.
Well, thank you for both Jason and Jake for speaking to the bigger picture. We'll pose the same question to you, Rebecca, specifically from the perspective of independent living and the aging population.
David had his hand up. I don't know if he had something specific to ask of Jake first.
Yeah, so I actually had just a quick follow-up. I think both Jake and Jason is you talked about the growth and there's a lot of different. Would one of you be able to just kind of walk us through a little bit about the different types of e-bikes that there are? Again, I think we mentioned cargo bikes, mountain bikes, but just give us a little rundown of what we're seeing right now.
Go ahead, Jason. If you're selling them, you'd probably know best.
Yeah, the bread and butter, because it's the average age is still up there, are the very upright, wider tired, almost beach cruiser style. That's really common. The commuter style bikes, flat bar, have really taken off. People are using those in cities as commuting, things of that nature. You have been seeing for a while fat tire bikes, e-bikes. So people would use those, say, up in this part of the state for winter use on fat bike trails, or we get a fair amount of people that come in that are, a lot of them, again, older demographic. They're using them to access, like for bird hunting and things like that on public land, instead of walking or taking something motorized that may or may not be allowed and is stinky. So you're starting to see that a fair amount. We get a fair amount of people coming in too that are looking for something more stable. So trikes, we get more and more people that are asking for trikes. Yeah, kind of whatever you see as a bike, they can throw a motor and a battery on and make it, into an e-bike. And all of a sudden that opens it up into more users being able to use it for specific purposes. So it's been fun to see what people have been doing with these different bikes now that they have a little bit of assistance.
Well, thank you both for that. And thank you for catching David's hand there, Rebecca. I'll pass the mic back over to you.
No problem. Actually, Jason had mentioned something that I was going to touch on. It hasn't come up yet with the disabled community here in Milwaukee County, but in the past with the bike share program here, there was an uproar that there were not adaptive bikes included as part of the bikes offered in the bike share program. But we have not heard yet from the community that they like to see maybe trikes included in the bike share program as far as e-bikes, or maybe low entry bikes, low frame for entry for someone like me with arthritis in my knee, that it's a little harder to around there. But I anticipate that happening only because they were very vocal in the past. And I'm talking strictly on a bike share program where those individuals that wish to purchase those on them by themselves, and then that's a different story. So I anticipate that may come up in the future, though, here in Milwaukee County.
Oh, thank you, Rebecca. Thank you, everyone. I'll pass the mic over to Kim.
Sure. So we set a really good stage for what's happening with e-bikes currently. Really, the impetus for this topic came out of a conversation David and I had, earlier this summer when we were talking about what we're starting to hear from our communities around e-bikes, e-scooters, and now as we've introduced the topic as well with these e-motos. So what we're curious to hear about is what are the emerging issues you're seeing with e-bikes and e-scooters? And as much as possible, if you could also introduce if you're seeing any tension with might be e-motos, that would be really beneficial as well. Going back to in February, we hosted up here what's called the Trail Summit. So it brought together about 90 stakeholders. One of the conversations we had was just around general trail etiquette and education. We know, especially since the pandemic, there's a lot of new trail users. So we wanted to talk about what are people seeing and hearing regarding trail etiquette and education? And the top comment that was brought up was e-bike and e-scooter speed and etiquette on the trails. So we're curious to hear from some of the panelists, starting with you, Joel, about any of the issues that you're starting to see at the local level. Once again, thinking about e-bikes, e-scooters, and then if e-motos have entered the picture as well.
Sure. And I'll kind of start with the latter of those. I think for us, it's really the e-motos that are creating the issue that then kind of reflects itself on e-bikes and electric scooters at the local level. At least here in Ashwaubenon, we get comments from our elected officials and other key community stakeholders, business owners, about these rascallion kids that are running around town on these e-bikes. They'll call them e-bikes, but they're really e-motos at 30 miles an hour, and they're weaving around traffic and so on and so forth. And so I think many people that are on this call that either work for or represent a local unit of government, you probably have had a conversation in the last 12 months about some elected official or some stakeholder said, we need to shut this down. We need to stop these individuals from running around rampant in our community, violating every traffic law there is known to man, because these bikes are just ridiculous. And so that's kind of the local issue, is just really kind of bringing awareness, education, and knowledge to key leaders, elected leaders, stakeholders, about what electric bikes are, what these electric scooters are, and really what these e-motos are. The vast majority of these devices that people are buying, if they're buying them online, are probably more of an e-moto than they are an electric bike. And so that's creating some of that consternation in the community. So for us, it's really about education, awareness, and knowledge about what the rules of the road are, what devices are considered legal or legally able to operate, and then where that legal operation can occur. And I think that's ultimately what we're seeing at our local level as our biggest challenge.
Yeah, Kim, and if I could hop in quick and share a little from Sun Prairie's perspective, I'm hearing the very same things both from our elected officials as well as our police and fire officials, that there's a lot of kind of reckless behavior happening. And presumably this isn't with a traditional e-bike, class 1, 2, or 3. Again, those are bikes. It's, you can't easily do a pop a wheelie on an e-bike, but I was recently forwarded a video that a community member had taken on their Ring camera of a teenager riding an e-moto on our trails. When it runs parallel to one of our streets, they were doing a wheelie. They came down right before they got to the intersection. Someone turned right and they collided with them. And there was just a lack of understanding there, again, I think, between both users, whose responsibility, like who had the right of way there, and then I think because it was the e-moto, just not slowing down as they were entering the intersection. And I think that there's a real issue there because it was a teenager. I don't know if this person had a driver's license. There's a very good chance that they haven't really learned the rules of the road. And then I think we have this kind of gray area where you have bikeways intersecting with kind of car travel lanes. And how do we educate people to make sure everybody understands what they're supposed to do there? So we're seeing a lot of those same issues in Sun Prairie, and I'm sure in a lot of other communities.
And Kim, what I'll add to that is you tend to get kind of a knee-jerk reaction then, where using home rule authority, you're going to craft some very creative ordinance that restricts or eliminates individual ability to use these devices where it would otherwise be appropriate and beneficial. But because of that knee-jerk reaction, you kind of react more on emotion than you do on a sound set of expertise or knowledge.
Great. Thank you, Joel. It looks like Jake has a point he wants to make here as well, and then we'll turn it over to Andy after Jake.
Thank you. And actually, I was gonna throw it to Andy in a transition. So just wait here, watch this. I just want to kind of frame a little bit too here, and I fully understand and appreciate, this is new stuff, and we're all kind of like feeling our way, and it's been very quickly. I want to frame it a little though, that we also have thousands and thousands, 40,000 deaths in cars every year. And I don't see too many kind of these panels discussing, well, are we limiting cars now? Or should, I mean, I guess in a more broader sense we do, but, I guess so I was going to throw to Andy. And I know we've talked a little bit about what are the actual rates of kind of the crashes or involved, or is this actual qualitative, quantitative information that we're seeing an increase in crashes, dangerous, all of those sorts of things kind of comparatively to our transportation as a whole, which is dominated by motor vehicles, electric motor vehicles now, which are quiet and have various sensing and things too. So again, I know we're talking e-bikes, but I want to always keep in the back of that mind that what is the kind of scale and scope we're actually considering. And so if Andy, I know, again, you've had some, maybe data or thoughts on that. So happy to toss to you.
I saw Jason's hand up, so may I have Jason, if he has a response to you, Jake, and then I can talk about the data, which I love talking about no matter what.
Okay. Yeah, I was just gonna, I had a couple of notes, regarding some of the issues, getting back to that. One of them was brought up about some of these bikes not even being e-bikes, and that's the media reporting. And I'll go back to years back when the Simon Cowell, right, the guy from whatever show he was from, and he got in that accident. It was e-bike, e-bike, e-bike. But if you looked at what he was riding, it was one of these E-motos. You're doing 35, 40 miles an hour with a throttle. So, just because you can all of a sudden put some pedals and a chain on it, it suddenly becomes an e-bike to some people, even though they're probably not pedaling it really at all. So that's one of the things and it's a tarnish on the whole industry. I remember maybe a couple of years ago, Bosch had, the company that's responsible for making a lot of motors and e-bike systems for a lot of these more name brand, bikes like Trek and Cannondale. They use Bosch systems. Bosch, a German company, had sent a letter, like a formal letter to the U.S. Trade Commission. I forget which agency it was, basically saying we need to clarify this better, because these accidents that are happening, and they're happening oftentimes on these e-moto type bikes, they're getting reported as e-bikes, and it's a tarnish on the entire e-bike industry, and it shouldn't be. So that was one thing where it's it would be nice if there was a distinction made, and when it's an e-bike, great, call it an e-bike, but if it's not, call it something else, and it doesn't bring e-bikes down with it. The last point I wanted to make quick is we see a wide range of bikes that come into the shop, from nicer specialized ones like we carry, down to something somebody bought off Facebook. And especially a lot of these, direct from China, the way they're built is extremely unsafe. None of the electronics ever get any sort of updates to any bug fixes, any things like that. And, these systems are real herky-jerky, especially with a throttle. You go and we'll take them on test rides. And even if it's just a class 2 and it only goes up to 20, a flick of the thumb and you're cruising, you have to hang on. Whereas the nicer bikes, they sense your pedal cadence and they kind of ease you into that power. So that's another thing that doesn't help at all, is when people get these really, really cheap e-bikes, the build quality is terrible. And a lot of shops won't work on these electrical systems when stuff does go wrong. So they end up kind of out of luck or riding something that isn't very safe at all.
Thanks, Jason. So as we think about some of the things that Jake and Jason and everybody else has talked about, here in Wisconsin, when we think about our data, we're thinking about crash data, and those are our police reported crash data that we look at. And right now in Wisconsin, the state statute says it only needs to be a police reported crash if it involves a motor vehicle in transit. So, and this doesn't just apply to e-bikes, it applies to ATVs and snowmobiles as well with this process. So if a e-bike hits a pedestrian, that's not going to be in our reported crash database that we currently have. And so it kind of gets back into this, how are we measuring the problem? We know by looking at some of the data from other states, and we're looking at data with regards to our hospital records. I know that there's some DHS people on here, that we do have seen an uptick in it. But then it comes back to, just as Jason talked about and Jake talked about, is how do we define e-bikes? This isn't just we have our classes, but as we've heard, it gets kind of muddied in the water a little bit. And the state of Massachusetts has done a lot of work in looking at vulnerable road user safety. They've had several committees that have looked at it, and they've done some reports that I'd be happy to share with folks. And they've really looked at it to say it's kind of hard for people to look and visualize, even though there should be stickers on it. Sometimes it's still hard to see. Do we need to classify it differently by how fast it goes? What is the energy output that it can go? As we know from safety, the most severe crashes are going to be where that 1/2 that mass times that velocity squared. So the faster somebody is going, the more likely it's going to be more severe. And so we have to look at those. So we have to figure out common terminology. What are the words we're going to use? How do we get people to look at it globally so that, when I'm talking about it, it's the same as when Jake's talking about it, which is the same as when our law enforcement is looking at it, versus even our health professionals when they're coding this in a hospital record that are looking at it. So, the definitions, how are we examining it? We're kind of looking at it with regards to it. As we also are thinking about e-bikes or e-scooters, the other concern is that fire and battery risk. We run this same thing with Jake, as he's talking about with electric vehicles as well, that we also need to be considering when we're thinking about our transportation system and kind of thinking about it, right? So people that put e-bikes inside their offices, how are they capturing that? Are they going away for a long weekend and things of that sort? These are all things that we, are not necessarily transportation related, but the same things that we think about with our electric vehicles and things of that sort. So being able to kind of think globally about this is important as we're thinking about kind of the whole aspect along with it. But I think I'll keep coming back to, we need common terminology that everybody can understand and look at as best as possible with it. And then how are we collecting the data in a uniform manner so that we can compare what's happening in Sun Prairie to what's happening in Madison, to what's happening in Chicago or Massachusetts or elsewhere on that side as well. So we're able to see, is it just a Wisconsin thing because we have more tourists that are coming into town and are not familiar with it, so we need to change our educational strategies? Or is it because of the infrastructure being different here than someplace else with our winter weather and our a lot of our population enjoying to being out biking in colder weather because we're used to that? So those are some of the things that I think about as we're looking forward to the future of saying, how do we really look at the safety of this? How are we training not only the people that are riding the bikes, but who are collecting the data and who are looking at the injuries that are happening from this or not happening?
Thank you, Andy. Yeah, that's great. And I think that is one of the big issues that, from a transportation planning standpoint, if we don't have the data, it's so hard to really grasp the issue. And I think that I appreciate, Jake, your comment about talking about vehicle crashes, which I don't think that we talk about enough. Again, I'm a Vision Zero practitioner, so obviously that is, my whole shtick. But I agree. I think that this is part of that broader conversation, and I think there's a level of bicycles being an accessible thing. It's something from our childhood. It really is. It's very free, more so than a car, because of the insurance costs and the gas and all of the risk associated versus a bike. It's such a freeing thing, and so I think that it might be a much more personal kind of experience in a lot of ways, and why a lot of communities are so focused on it. But I wholly agree that it needs to be couched in that broader conversation. So thank you all so much. There's definitely a lot of issues with e-bikes and e-motos, and so I think that we want to talk a little bit more about what do we do? What are some of the solutions that we're seeing? Who is experimenting around this? I know, and I appreciate Joel mentioning that some of the knee-jerk reaction is, let's ban it. And there are communities that are doing that. In the Chicagoland area, there are communities that have banned e-bikes because I think there's such a sense of like, how do we even begin to deal with this? But I think that there are common sense ways to approach this. And again, from a transportation professional standpoint, is like there's sensible regulatory and enforcement environment that we can create. So I'd like to toss it back to you, Joel, to talk a little bit about the new regulations that you have and the approach that your community has had in trying to make some progress on this issue.
Sure. Yeah, thank you. So I think the key thing for us is we were really trying to focus on creating uniformity, meaning, as I mentioned before, we didn't want to create this knee-jerk reaction to an emotional response to what people were seeing or feeling in the public. So what we wanted to do is understand what is permissible under statutory law, and then where we either don't necessarily adopt statutory law within our own municipal code, work to do so. So what we ended up doing this past year is effectively trying to create that uniformity by calling out specific provisions within statute within our own municipal code. So we created definitions that align with Wisconsin state statute in the form of e-bikes, electric scooters. Those are all defined as they are in statute. Prior to this ordinance, we had different definitions. So nothing really aligned, and we wanted to make sure there was uniformity, primarily for our public safety officers, to provide consistent enforcement here on out. In addition to that, we wanted to make sure that our code, I use the word uniformity in the sense of it's uniform to existing traffic law and definitions within statute. But you have to also recognize that within statute, there are provisions that allow local municipalities to create additional restrictions. As an example, a municipality may allow a bicycle or an electric bicycle to operate on sidewalks, but you would need to call that out within your own municipal code to allow that provision. Electric scooters is similar. There is a provision within statutes that allow electric scooters to be permitted to be ridden on sidewalks or restricted to certain streets with a designated mile-per-hour range. And so we called that out as part of our deliberation process and ultimately crafted a code that met the values that our community had. As an example, our code does restrict electric scooters on streets over 30 miles an hour or greater. But then there are 2 streets in which we designate and sign as not being permissible because they are below that speed limit, but because of traffic volumes and activity in that area, we prohibit electric scooters from operating on that street. Now, the alternative is you can operate your electric scooter on the sidewalk as an alternative. So we separate those electric scooters from traffic, put them on the sidewalk, and then the same holds true with bicycles. We do permit in our community bicycles to be ridden on sidewalks and electric bicycles. Now, under statute, you have to use due care and caution. You have to yield to pedestrians. You have to follow and adhere to the rules that are established within statute. Our board, our elected officials felt it was important. There was significant public interest to make sure that primarily kids, let's say, those users that are a little less comfortable operating their bikes on a sidewalk have the ability to ride on the sidewalk legally and not be forced to be out on the road. Then 2 other quick things I'll just note that I think provide value to us. I think most municipalities require registration. So our code does require registration of bicycles and electric bikes. That gives us an opportunity that if somebody comes in and attempts to register an E-moto, we can provide some education at that point that this can't be registered as an electric bicycle. In addition to that, and to some degree, probably unique, I think we're one of at least 2 communities in the state. We do have a helmet law. So individuals that are operating a bicycle, an electric bicycle, or an electric scooter that are under the age of 16 are required to wear a helmet, and it has to meet the certain Bicycle Federation standards. We're not using that as a tool to punish or enforce children that don't have helmets, but it does give our officers an opportunity, a probable cause, if you will, to stop somebody and have a conversation and provide education and information as to proper usage of electric bicycles, and electric scooters. And really, ultimately, it's a conduit for us to have those conversations. And that was a really important part for our ordinance. We have a bicycle and pedestrian committee, and that was a key thing for them, is they wanted us to have the helmet rule to, help ensure safety of these users, especially the most vulnerable, but also give our tool to our public safety officers to have conversations and provide education. And so that was unique to us. The other thing I'll mention that we did that statutes I think is a little limiting on is for electric scooters, we have a single rider requirement. We see a lot of kids that are riding with two riders on a single scooter, zooming up and down the street. And obviously that rider or that passenger really has no control over that device. And so that operator, if they were to swerve or maneuver or miss something and crash, then that rider is potentially at a greater risk. So we did install a single rider requirement on electric scooters. So that does also give us an opportunity to have a conversation with riders so that we can work towards education and provide knowledge, but then also hopefully get to a level of adherence to that uniform traffic law.
Yeah, thanks, Joel. That's a lot of really good stuff. And there's a couple of things I wanted to follow up on and then open up to the group, but Jake has his hand, so go ahead, Jake.
I could go all day on this, first of all. So we're gonna one thing, and maybe we overlooked that when we were putting this panel together, but having like a law enforcement officer to discuss some of directly from their perspective, because what I'm hearing from the law enforcement that I've spoken with, county sheriffs, local MPD, like this is not something they have the capacity to be doing. They can't send a law officer to watch the trails and ticket every, e-bike or e-motor or whatever user. They obviously are dealing with a lot of the kind of just general societal issues as far as budget and staffing and things that we all are seeing. And so, I guess I'm hesitant to be like, enforcement, dump it all on enforcement. They're going to solve it all, because as we've seen, I don't, in a lot of capacities, I don't know if that's ultimately the solution. I appreciate Joel's, their aspect and up there to kind of do a warning system, because we've also seen in Milwaukee that how are you ticketing? Who are you targeting when you're ticketing this? Who is being impacted? Are you looking at our, at our diverse communities and different ethnicity communities versus larger, more white or higher income communities where we're seeing a lot of youth who are able to afford these types of things, maybe using them inappropriately. So I think I just want to make sure that when we think about enforcement, we're not just saying they're going to solve it all, and also be concerned about some of those kind of larger issues with enforcement we've discussed as a society over the recent years too.
Yeah, that's a great point, Jake, and I can definitely echo talking to our police officers in Sun Prairie. The community asks so often for more enforcement of traffic laws and stop signs and all the rest. And it's, we're like, where do you want us to focus? Because we have limited staff, limited time. These are hotspot areas, so on and so forth. How do you really divvy that up? And ultimately enforcement is, it's part of this, it's part of the issue. It has to be, but it certainly can't be all of it. And I think I want to focus on that a little bit, because I do think that's a really important question moving forward is how do we, what does it look like? What does a good regulatory and enforcement environment look like at the local level? Because there has to be something. But before we get there, Rebecca, go ahead.
I had my hand up after right after Jake, and I thought, well, I'll hold back because I think he may address what I wanted to address, which he did. But one of the things that I found when I was the ADA coordinator at the city of Milwaukee, and I would train the police officers on the ADA requirements, regulations, and then, well, I'll just keep it at regulations. And they decided, well, we're going to train our own cadets to do this. You don't need to worry about it. And then I watched some of the classes and I kind of cringed. So my thought was with the education component, how engaged is the police department? And I like the idea of, going through training, but the capacity of the community, just like with even enforcement, I think is one thing. I think maybe Ashwaubenon, maybe that is not an issue, but like Jake and I are definitely in Milwaukee, it is an issue. But the dedication to that, I think of someone like where Jake from the Bike Fed, of course, they're going to make sure that they take the training seriously and work with that. So I think the education component, I like that idea, but who's the appropriate party to do that? That's one thing I would want to stress.
Well, and that's a perfect segue to, I think, the question that I want to ask, and this is going to be a little bit more open-ended for the panelists. And I think this really has to do with it can deal with kind of any aspect of e-bikes, whether it's the point of sale, whether it's user behavior and etiquette, and then I guess enforcement of existing rules. But where should that responsibility lie? And I ask that as an open-ended question because I think that you've mentioned some of those things already. But who should that responsibility be with? Is there additional rules at the state level and the federal level that we need to make sure that at point of sale there is some sort of, and this is a comment in the Q&A, there's some sort of consumer protection piece there that, like, yeah, if you're selling these things, like, you can't, you're going to sell a car that doesn't have brakes. Like, yeah, you're good luck staying in business, right? Like, selling cars to people without driver's license. Again, like, if you were to be caught, like, good luck maintaining your license there. I think with e-bikes, it seems like it maybe is a little bit more of an open field because, you can go to Ace Hardware and you can buy an e-moto, and you can, buy these things off Amazon and they show up at your front door. And so I'm wondering if anyone in this group has any thoughts on, where should some of that responsibility lie? And I see Andy's hand, and I think too for, kind of the Milwaukee folks too, is like, where do we think it should fit for some of these bigger cities with less capacity? So first, I'll go to Andy.
So you're going to not love my answer because it's going to be everyone. So as we think about a safe system approach, right, and which is all what we're trying to do with Vision Zero, we know that not one individual group can do this, right? And so we have to be thinking about that safe system, and we're thinking about our users, making sure we're tying in our parents, our schooling, our education with that. When we think about the vehicles here, our e-bikes, our e-scooters, is making sure that on the selling side of it, right, that they're doing work in that education, which I know they are, but being able to have some of this. We can model it after some of the southern states that have a kind of an agreement that people sign that say, I understand the risks associated with this. It's not legally binding, but there has been shown that just even that having that discussion on that piece of paper starts that kind of thinking process behind it. Making sure we have the right infrastructure. Are our roads set up? Are our trails set up? Are we understanding? Are we signing them properly so folks know where they're supposed to be going and looking at it? As we're thinking about our speeds, those of you guys who've seen me speak before know that I have a huge speed soapbox that I won't get into, but having folks understand the implications. And I actually think that, in an ideal world, having this discussion at a younger age with our folks that are riding e-bikes and e-scooters might actually help us when they get into driving, when they understand that the fact of that speed plays a factor in the severity of those crashes, and having that really makes them understand that speed limits are not the minimum. They are absolute maximum, and none of us take that way. And I'm sure some law enforcement on here would say the same thing, is that we need to make sure that people understand why we set speed limits the way we do, and then being able to look at it. And then on the other side is our post-crash care side. Are we having the right data? Are we making sure that we're training our first responders to actually talk about this as well, right? So it's not just on the people that are selling, it's not just on law enforcement, but it really is our whole community, which I think from looking at the participants list, we have everybody here. We have representatives, we have law enforcement, we have our healthcare system, we have our sellers, we have everybody here today. We have to keep just working together on it. So I know it's a generic answer, but if we really think about what each one of us could do, I think that might be able to help look at this problem. Thank you.
Yeah, that's great, Andy, and I appreciate that safe systems approach. Maybe that was a little low-hanging fruit for you, but I think that is really the key here, is that there are obviously a lot of overlapping systems and regulations as far as how do we get here, and then the education piece. So we're running a little bit tight on time, but I did want to ask a question about that education and engagement, because I think it is so often where a lot of people will go to after enforcement is education and engagement. How do do we help build culture around good behaviors, right? How do we make this just a norm as opposed to kind of, trying to get these one-offs? Oh, we see somebody who's doing, reckless behavior, we intervene with them. How do we make this a much more broad-based thing? And so I think I wanted to ask this question and see what anyone's thoughts are on two parts. One is young people. And so how do we help them understand the rules of the road prior to driver's ed, knowing that they're going to be using some form of these devices? And then I think on the other side is, what about older riders who maybe haven't ridden their bike in the last 30 years and who now all of a sudden are on a bike, it has a lot of power, they're going fast, and how do we get across to them, like, here's good etiquette. This is, you can't just drive, as much as bikes have the same law or rights and responsibilities as a motor vehicle, you really can't ride a bike like a car and assume people are going to yield to you in the same way. And so I just kind of want to open that up and see if anyone has any thoughts on older riders, young riders, education. Maybe I'm kind of poking at you, Jake, because Bike Fed is such a key leader in that in the state. But
yeah,
why don't you go first? Yeah.
Thanks. Yeah, I'll jump in. So yes, this is there is not a lot of pre-made safety information for e-bikes specifically out there. Although I will say that to that point, e-bikes are legal vehicles of the road. And so a lot of the same bike safety issues that we teach, use your signal, stopping at stoplights, things like that, those still apply to e-bikes, right? Especially when on the road. And but I think that, the challenge is, right, they go a little faster. They might have a longer stopping distance. They might be heavier. And so those are things that we're adding to kind of our general bike safety classes and information and handouts. I have a few people replied to. We've got a YouTube series with some kind of bike safety things on there. I've been trying to reply in the comments there. Like I said, we're adding kind of those e-bike awareness things to kind of all of our just general bike safety guides and online images and kind of PSA stuff to share. So if anyone wants any of that kind of, a lot of this is free stuff to give you. And again, it's just general bike safety stuff. We can give you a lot of that. We also have a team right now that is just starting to go around the state and do more trainings and education, and also train local leaders to help them become kind of local champions and be knowledgeable and be able to pass that word in lieu of us being kind of everywhere all the time, which is same as our law enforcement officers, really impossible. So if anyone really, I know we're kind of up in time here too, but if anyone wants to talk more about the assets, resources that are available to you for education wise, please reach out to me.
Yeah, and I will mention that we will send a follow-up email on this. So if any of us have included some links, we will make sure everybody gets access to those. All right, Jason, you've got your hand. Go ahead.
Yep. Thanks. So in regards to like bike shops and what they can do to help out, we get a fair amount of people because there's so many vacationers up here. They want to know they're primarily renting e-bikes. And they want to know, like, are there any particular laws? So, we kind of help them out. And even then, it can be depending on, well, are you going on the paved trail up here? That's a county trail. Are you going on the bearskin trail? That's a state trail. They may vary there. So I think what would really help, and I know as you get bigger in government, whether it's state or federal, it gets like more convoluted and takes longer for something to hash out. But I think having the laws not so fragmented would really help, and just have a common message that we would, as a bike shop, reiterate what they would hear from a bike shop in Milwaukee or in Los Angeles or whatever with this framework. And I think that the redundancy of the message would start to resonate versus asking your local bike shop, well, what are the laws up here? What's unique up here? So eventually when we get to a point where we're going to have a more organized set of rules and stuff, I think it'll resonate better with people and they'll just know what the rules are, but who knows when we'll get there.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, that's great. I appreciate that, Jason. I think there is, and to Andy's point, there's such a need to really define these things in a uniform way, in a consistent way, so that we're all talking the same language. And then when we're doing education, Bike Fed putting together videos, again, we're using that same language to reinforce the things that we know. So, so we are going to now turn over to question and answer. So we got quite a lot of comments and questions in the chat. Actually, Rebecca, is there something that you wanted to hop in on quick before we turn over to Alexander?
Something out in left field, but kind of talk about disability etiquette and talking about high rates of speeds. One of the things with the aging population, the disabled community, things that come up is sometimes the deaf may not necessarily hear a bike coming up. So they may not move when you're announcing that you're approaching them. Same thing with the blind, they may not see you. But I'm going to also address another disability that you may think, what the hell are they doing there? Excuse my French, but I do know several mobility device users that will not use the sidewalks because of the conditions of the sidewalk. So you may see them in bike lanes because they feel safer transversing in bike lanes rather than sidewalks. So I just want those individuals to be aware that if that happens, there's a very good reason why they're doing that.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Rebecca. And I think that facility and infrastructure piece is, I don't know that we've maybe talked about it as much as we need to here, but it is such a huge part of how are we ensuring that we have the right facilities in our communities for all the different users. All right, Alexander, why don't you take it away with some Q&A?
All right, very good. We have about 13 minutes here, so I will ask that the panelists do their best to keep answers short and sweet as we take these in the order that were received so that we can get through all of them. First question from Rob Bartlow. I think this would probably be for Jason. Who are the leading manufacturers of E-motos?
Of E-motos, I'm not super familiar with E-motos. I know, I'm spacing on the name. There's a brand that we don't sell any of those. We just sell normal bikes. I know a lot of them are like direct to consumer brands, and and they kind of look like miniature dirt bikes, if you will. But yeah, I'm not familiar. A lot of them are tiny little brands. For what it's worth, big companies like the usual bike brands like Specialized and Trek, none of them make anything like that. In fact, those companies very rarely even make anything that has a throttle. They'll make a model or two, maybe a cargo version, but for the most part, any big brand bike that you've heard of, all they make are class 1 and 2 pedal assist. So that's a big distinction. They are staying in their lane in that regard and not even really delving into the throttles and certainly not getting into any of these, really fast kind of unregulated E-motos.
Thank you, Jason. Steve Arnold asks, I have seen, quote, things that look like bikes advertised as 750 watts, but some with higher value of peak power up to 1500 watts. Do these confirm to any of classes 1 through 3 as defined by state law? I assume the answer is no, and I'm seeing heads shaking.
Yeah, it's actually a federal thing was what I've been learning is if it's got it's a consumer product if the engine is less than 750 watts. If it's more, then it's a motor vehicle. And so I think that's also reflected in state law that if its engine is more powerful than that, it's definitely not an e-bike.
And the other thing too is so many bikes, the vast majority of e-bikes will have like a 750 watt motor. They don't ever really get to that wattage. What a lot of the companies like Specialized and Trek, they'll list is the torque. So we'll have bikes that are all 750 watts and have drastically different power because they measure the torque in Newton meters. So one might have a 55 Newton meter torque motor and one might have a 90 Newton meter torque motor. Those are wildly different power and they're both 750 watts. So when you see the 750 watt thing, that is, it gets really fragmented below and there's drastically different powers all under the 750 watt umbrella. So a lot of the smaller brands don't talk about their Newton meters of torque because their motors are very small and underpowered. So they'll just say 750 watts and they'll come in and look at one of our Specialized and be like, oh, it's got the same size motor. It's like they're all 750 watt motors, or most of them are. But now we're talking Newton meters of torque, which vary drastically as far as how much power you're going to receive from the bike.
And there's no classification of Newton meters in the state ordinance, I believe, right? Okay. Maybe that's something. I saw we had a state representative on here. Maybe that's something they want to take charge on.
Absolutely. Next question from Alexandros. I am concerned about the backlash to e-bikes resulting from proliferation of e-motos. How can we influence those who sell them? I feel there is a consumer protection issue that is not being addressed. Suppose I could go to just about any one of our panelists.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. So many of the issues that I've seen or heard about or read about, I get trade, emails all the time from advocacy groups to, manufacturers, all that. And so much of that comes down to the messaging about the difference between all of these. And then I think it's so easy now. Somebody mentioned before, you can jump on Amazon or Facebook and these things are thrown at your face for $900 or $1,000, and they're super cheap, very dangerous, by the way. Those are generally the cheaper bikes are the ones that are generally starting all the fires. They're not certified. So when you get that, and there is no like bike shop involved, and a lot of these things are direct to consumer, so many of these brands are, yeah, it leaves open the ability to just kind of throw whatever up on a web page and somebody can order it no matter how unregulated or unsafe it is.
No, absolutely. Thank you. From Dan Fortier. What has your experience been with companies like Lime? In my experience, they ultimately chose not to come to town. There are issues with their rental bikes being left in places they should not be left. I had insisted they needed to use racks or corral systems to control the end of trip. Clearly, these companies can improve mobility, but want freedom from restrictions. Have you had issues with companies like Lime?
This is Becky. I'm going to answer that. So Lime, when I think of Lime, I think of e-scooters, and the city of Milwaukee does have a contract with Lime, and they had contract with 2 other e-scooter companies. I think just one more now at this point in time, but it is a huge problem. They did have like established parking on the street for scooters. Do they always make it there? No, and it is a huge problem. I've had reports of individuals that are blind tripping over scooters left in the sidewalks just parked, scooters, e-scooters parked on the sidewalk or in a curb ramp. And of course, individuals with disabilities cannot get up out of their wheelchair and move that, or a blind person that's blind be able to effectively move that e-scooter. So it is a huge problem. They did have those public right-of-ways. I can't remember which company. They did have the public right-of-ways geofence that supposedly you could not turn off the e-scooter after your trip if you were parked within that geofenced area. I don't know what's happened, because I still see it happening where they're parked where they're not supposed to. So it has been a problem.
Yeah, and I would hop on that too, is because it's a transaction happening in the public right of way, it really is something that local governments can regulate. And the value there is a company with their name that has to pay and has to be responsible. And so I think the issues are definitely still there, but the regulatory environment around that has evolved a lot. A lot of places are going to, you literally can only put them in stations. If you don't put them there, the company is going to continue to charge you a big fee. I know when I was in DC recently, that was the case for a lot of these scooters. It was like, there's this one square zone you have to put it in, otherwise we're going to continue charging you. So there are some of those tools, but it remains an ongoing issue, I know.
And that is the case in Milwaukee as well, that happens.
I just want to add, I'm going to put it in the chat. I think this has come up in a few answers already, but under Wisconsin State Statute, Section 349, 237, it does allow local units of government to restrict or prohibit the short-term commercial rental of these electric scooters to the general public. If this is something that municipality would like to either restrict or prohibit, I would encourage you to enact that within your own municipal code. It's been suggested to us that if you don't, then they have basically carte blanche ability to operate. So because there is a call out that says that you can or should restrict or prohibit, I would encourage you to do that. So I'll put the reference in the chat so everyone has that as well.
Thank you, everyone. We have 2 more questions left that were unanswered in the chat and 4 more minutes to go. Question 1 from Steve Arnold. I understand that many E-motos don't have VIN numbers, and so can't be registered as a motorcycle or anything else. Please confirm.
Couldn't tell you. Never owned one or ridden one, but that, I mean, again, that would come down to regulatory type things like, do they have to follow a certain rule per the state or the federal government? Like, oh, like a motorcycle has to have a VIN. So I think a lot of that comes down to the company's not going to do something like that if they don't need to do it, if it means more cost to them and more restrictions to them. I would think that has to come from above.
Absolutely. And then one last question from Angus Lamont. What are the thoughts from the group on establishing the standard of reverse flow on multi-use trails? Walk on left, ride on right. This can address a lot of issues of walker bike closing approach surprises.
I can jump in there. I think that, and it kind of goes to the etiquette too. I mean, we as a society need to just be, I don't know how to get you to care about someone else or sort of thing, which is a challenge. I think, we could go out there and we could make communities put a line down the middle of the trail, but what's that to stop someone from riding on the other side? So I think that, that's going to be, again, it's a tough thing to enforce, both what's the penalty and also to get people to conform to that. And also just having this, that goes back to my kind of comment earlier about the space. When you have an 8-foot wide trail, splitting it up either way I don't think gives a lot of space for having to pass or provide that opportunity. So, I don't know. We all need to be nicer to our fellow people. And if we can do that, honestly, I think a lot of these issues might be resolved.
I agree.
Thank you. Thank you. That concludes our questions. We got through all of them.
All right. Thank you, Alexander. And thank you, panelists, so much for your time. Thank you for all of the attendees. We hope that you got a lot out of it. I know I sure did. Just wanted a quick wrap up that if you're interested in help shaping the next steps in this conversation, please reach out to myself, Kim, and Alexander. We are not intending this to be the only conversation we have. We know that this is a big topic that I think to the substance of this conversation, really, we need to keep having this conversation. So if you want to help take those next steps, let us know. And a shameless plug that this was sponsored and coordinated by both APA Wisconsin and APBP Wisconsin. If you're a professional and you would like to get support from either of those organizations, there is quite a lot of value from both of them. So please do join. The last things, a recording will get sent to you automatically, and I will be following up with an email that includes a lot of the links here, as well as some opportunities for future conversations. So thank you once again to all of the panelists, and thank you to everyone who attended.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Have a
Bye
great
now.
day.